Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Making Sense of Public, Private, Hybrid, and Multi-Cloud. This special webinar event is brought to you in partnership with Nutanix and produced by Actual Tech Media. It's a confusing time out there for anyone who's investigating cloud services, and this webinar is here to help. We're here to answer all your questions. We want this to be an educational event, and as such, we encourage you to use the questions box on the left-hand side there of your audience console. We'll be doing a dedicated Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. I should mention my name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'll be serving as the moderator for today's event. I also want to call your attention to a number of handouts there in the Handouts tab on the left-hand side of your audience console. I can call your attention to that now. Check out there the Nutanix test drive link. We'll be talking about that later during the event. Also, a couple of special PDF assets, the anatomy of a private cloud, and also the ebook on how to deliver more business value with Nutanix Private Cloud. So make sure that you check those out, download those now, and you can read them after today's presentation. We'll also be announcing a $300 Tango gift card at the end of the webinar for one lucky attendee on the live presentation. If you're watching this on demand, I'm sorry, the drawing has already occurred. The price terms and conditions can be found there in the Handouts tab. And with that, I'm excited to kick it off and introduce you to today's expert presenters. On this event, you'll hear from Mr. Alan Waters, Senior Solutions Marketing Manager at Nutanix, and Mr. Greg White, Director of Solutions Marketing, also at Nutanix. Alan and Greg, it's great to have you on. I'll first hand it off to Alan. Take it away.
Hey, David. Thank you. And welcome, everyone. I was looking through the comments here. Everyone's saying good afternoon. This is a live webinar. And I saw Gary is in Maine. Gary, I'm in New Hampshire, so I'm not too far. I think you're the closest one to me. But hey, everyone, thanks for saying hi on the chat today. But again, welcome to the webinar. My name is Alan Waters. I'm here with Greg White. We're going to talk a little bit about public, private, hybrid, and multi-cloud. We're also going to talk a little bit about workloads and things to consider when you're talking about cloud and where to run them and so forth. But let's get into it and take a look at the agenda. Here's what you can probably hear my dogs in the background. I apologize for that. But we're going to talk, we have a few slides on talking about why cloud. We're going to have some definitions on that, considerations for workloads. I'll hand it over to Greg for that section. And then we'll finish it up about picking the correct platform to help make that whole journey easy and simple. So now I've been showing this message for the past few months, and really it's all about businesses needing to change to survive. And it's probably something, you've probably heard the message before, but really when you think about what's going on today, I think it means more than ever, given what we've all been going through with COVID-19 and so forth. IT really finds themselves with the added stress to increase agility, provision new workloads, for example, scale capacity quickly, bring new workloads on board without compromising security. I mean, if you think about it, some organizations went home on Friday night, and during the weekend, they were told that, hey, when they came back on Monday, 200 or 500 or more employees had to work from home that Monday, right? I mean, that's real stuff. Those are the real stories that we've been hearing. And of course, to do this, sometimes it requires a new modern IT strategy, and it's one that spans public and private environments and really allows you to place workloads on the right cloud. And there's a few things, right? You got to look at economics, you got to look at performance, service level agreements, you got to look at control, and it's a lot of things that we're going to be talking about in this webinar. So business drivers for change, there are other drivers beyond that, ones that were probably talked about before, the pandemic hit, but they're still key to the business. Business tries to change, IT needs to be a big part of it. They need to help enable business to grow revenue, delight customers, simplify things, simplify operations, and not just create more silos and make things difficult. And it's really, and picking the right cloud platform, and really if you're re-platforming, picking a new platform and the correct platform can help things, it can simplify and really allow IT to be the enabler. So here are some of the other top IT challenges. And I don't need to read through a lot of these, but when you look at some of these, the 6 that we have, there's probably 100 top IT challenges. When you look at these top ones, a lot of them can be associated with a kind of a legacy 3-tier infrastructure. And that's where, Nutanix kind of steps in with, being long known for their HCI. But the siloed infrastructure, storage and silos separately. Difficulty when you get an array in, it sits on the dock for months before it's tested and roll, and that slow rollout of infrastructure. So there's a lot of IT challenges that I think can be associated with kind of that legacy 3-tier and beyond, because a lot of times there's a lot of different management tools that are associated with that. So a lot of these top IT challenges can be associated with kind of that legacy 3-tier. Not to just isolate it to that, but when I think about them, I kind of pointed at that. So what if you could, what if you could take care of all things, improve all those things and more, move confidently toward really that enterprise cloud strategy, avoid those potential dead ends and silos, and really deliver quantifiable value at each one of those steps. So here's a look at kind of some of the different cloud models. And again, this is simplified, right? Don't take, but really at heart, it's really the 4 different ones. From that private cloud, really that on-prem, and there can be lots of different types of on-prem, whether it's that legacy 3-tier on-prem type of, if you're calling it a private cloud, and hyperconverged private cloud, but everything is located on-prem in your data center. Then there's public cloud, and there's lots of different types of public cloud, whether it's AWS, Azure, or even Salesforce.com, and even Oracle has some. But lots of different public clouds, third-party public clouds, and so forth that we're all familiar with. And then really the 2 that I like to talk about a little bit more, or kind of call out the differences, is really that hybrid cloud and the multi-cloud. It's like, well, what's the difference between those 2? Because a lot of times it's used interchangeably and so forth. But hybrid's a mixture of the 2, right? You still have your on-prem, you still have that public cloud, and being able to, mix the 2 together is really that hybrid. And really the difference that I like to think about between the 2 and multi is that if the hybrid is using a single type of public cloud, multi is using multiple ones, right? So maybe you're using Azure for something and then AWS for another, or Salesforce over here. So it's really a mix of multiple public clouds, all still coming down or having access, or along with that private cloud that you have set up. And that's how I like to see the differences. And I think the really definitions in general between the hybrid cloud and the multi-cloud for the different types of cloud models. So of course, public cloud is great, right? There's lots of reasons why organizations are moving to public cloud. The market's growing like crazy because really it addresses many of the pains and challenges that we looked at a second ago. Public cloud has really proven itself in being able to take a lot of the pains of that infrastructure management away, and it can enable IT to deliver substantial value. A lot of that business value that I was talking about, that you're probably saying, come on, Alan, speed up, let's get to it, and really deliver that substantial value back to the business in a timely manner. But given that, I apologize, my dog's playing with a tennis ball, I think, so. But, given that, private clouds aren't going away. And they have a lot of advantages to offer too. And there's some things you need to think about, because a lot of times when we go into a briefing and say, well, how many applications do you have? He says, well, I have 300 or 400 applications. It's like, can you really pick those 300 or 400 applications up and move them to the cloud? There's more you have to think about. And when you start talking about how expensive they might be and trying to retool those and re-platform those to move them to the cloud, and that's where kind of a mixture of public and private come into play. But private cloud's not going to go anywhere, right? I talked about those legacy infrastructures. some of those legacy infrastructures just can't run on a public cloud without the refactoring that I talked about. And that can be expensive. You have to refactor 200 applications. That's going to be expensive. It's going to be time consuming, and it's going to be complex. Um, you need to look at the demand. Burstable type applications are great for public cloud, but ones that run consistent over time and are steady over time, when you really look at those are a great fit and show a great TCO, a lower TCO when they're run on a modern private cloud, so on-prem versus a third-party public cloud. Of course, there's regulatory concerns that some countries have to deal with, GDPR and so forth. Maybe you don't know where that data is living. That might severely limit the use of public cloud and even place data there. And then there's the control, security. Maybe IT doesn't want to deploy some of their custom applications because it's hard to protect them and the data that might be associated with them. So public cloud's great, public cloud's growing, but don't throw private cloud away. When you really look at some of those applications and dig down into them, they make sense on private cloud too. So what's the answer, right? How do you solve both? Well, we believe that a hybrid and multi-cloud solution really offers the best of both worlds, since it allows you to optimize all the workloads that Greg's going to talk about in a second, and really allow you to run it on the right cloud for your business demands. And if you pick a right platform, pick the correct platform that's agile and adaptable, and not create another silo, because usually the example is, you're running an on-prem environment, someone needs to run something on AWS, you set up a whole other group or a few people to run that, and you basically create a new silo because those environments don't work together, and you don't want to do that, right? That just makes more complexity. So if you pick the correct platform that supports, public, private, then that hybrid and multi-cloud solution, or their cloud, can be made easy. So this is a perfect example, and I'm sure a lot of you out in the audience, have gone through this or going through it. And some of the complexity and silos that happen when you try to set up a private, public, or even a hybrid cloud together. Challenges add up fast. Things such as data locality, as you look around this picture or graph, the workload license portability, the latency, all the security, identity management that might be associated with it, and then of course applying consistent security to all these different places. So, as you probably experienced, this complexity gets problematic pretty quickly. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Greg to talk a little bit more about applications and workloads and considerations for different types of clouds. Greg, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep, sound good.
Great. Thanks so much, Alan. And I think that was a great setup for kind of level setting, talking about some of the key things that to think about and to understand and that we've had to deal with as we thought through the different cloud operating models we've got. So now we're going to kind of take the next lens or look at this, and that's really kind of diving into those, what are you trying to run? What are you trying to accomplish when you look at these clouds? And so there could be lots of different kinds of applications and workloads. I've just listed out a few big groups that we get involved with, but you also have within this your general server virtualization workloads, your DNS servers and your AD servers, and sort of all the other general things that are on top of all this. But some of the key workloads and applications that people look at trying to run to drive their business or some of these groupings. And if you think about this at a high level, these are the services that IT is trying to deliver to the business. And many times when you think of the world of cloud, people seem to think that that just then they magically work. And so the fact and fiction in there is, these IT services drive the business, and they absolutely require a lot of IT expertise to work successfully. And so what are some of the things so what I wanted to do is kind of present a way to think about these workloads where you're thinking about, you understand kind of the different cloud options you've got. And so how can you frame your workloads in ways to help pick the right cloud for each application? Because ultimately that's really what you're trying to do. And so what I've got here is a list of attributes that can be applied to these different workloads. This goes from the usage and the users, where they're located, where the data is located. What are those performance and capacity needs? Is there anything specific or special that's needed? Do you need GPU for some sort of AI workload, or for VDI, graphic intensive desktops, those kinds of things? What is your growth profile? What is your utilization profile? Understanding, like Alan said, the TCO of running workload in different places can be dramatically different depending on these workload characteristics. And so understanding those, are you looking for more of a CapEx or an OpEx approach to your spending? And one of the huge ones that only keeps getting bigger and bigger, security, compliance, governance, some of those things that go into it. And ultimately, there are a lot more. And so you could have some specific ones for your industry, for your line of business, for your specific customers or internal users. But this gives you a frame of reference to start to think about this, and some variables that you can plug in and help figure out where you want to run these. And so if you think about some of these things in the way, so if we take, what I wanted to do is provide, kind of some examples of how you might look at this. And so if you take some different types of applications, so we've got traditional 2 and 3 tier apps like a SAP S/4HANA workload, or ERP, analytics and big data apps like a Splunk or Elastic or something along those lines. And then your next generation digital transformation apps, those things that you might be building cloud native in a container. And look at those across some of those functional and attributes that we talked about, and can break out what are the requirements, how does that work? So how critical is it? What is the life cycle and packaging? Is it virtual machines versus containers and microservices? Is it high performance, low latency, or is it more of a reporting workload, a batch process, that sort of thing? What is your growth? Are you looking for CapEx or OpEx? And you can look at these different workloads with these lenses and define those attributes. So then you can then go and apply those to the different ways to run them, right? So whether you're talking about traditional infrastructure, whether you're talking about a private cloud, ideally something maybe built with software-defined approach, like using Hyperconverged, that sort of thing. And so you have options even within that. Do you self-manage your own private cloud, or do you use a third-party public cloud, software as a service, and then apply these characteristics to your workloads to get that best fit? So if you were looking at a self-managed private cloud, you're looking for, your workload is high performance, large capacity, low latency, you've got a good fit there. If you were trying to apply that to some elements of the public cloud, that might be a challenge. If you're looking for additional services that you would like to deploy in a very easy way, ancillary requirements that are needed for analytics, then a public cloud might make sense, if you're going to run it just for a week or two or in a short period of time. So you can take those functional attributes of the application, look at the attributes of your cloud choices, and make sure you've got a best fit amongst those. And so that's the idea of really taking a workload and application-based approach to how you pick the right cloud, how you evolve over time. So you may be able to even use multiple attributes, multiple offerings for cloud within an application's lifecycle. For example, you may decide to develop an application in the public cloud using containers, make sure that you can prove it without having to purchase infrastructure. But then when you know you're going to run it for the next 10 years, nonstop, maybe that's the time that you deploy on-premise private cloud and migrate from public to private. So you could have evolution of your cloud model over time as well. And so what are some of the things that are challenges when it comes to taking this approach and doing this idea of picking the right cloud? Well, and you start using multiple clouds, right? Being able to understand visibility into where you're running workloads, what kind of resources are you using? Are you able to understand cost? And are you able to really see into what is, it's easy to get the bill from the public cloud and know exactly how much a workload costs based on all the different services that you're buying. It's a little harder to do that on-prem. You've got a bulk cost, and then you're trying to attribute that across different workloads and use cases. So that whole chargeback approach, right? So that visibility and difference between those types of clouds has always kind of been a challenge. Another areas around that kind of aligns to that is a lack of accountability. And this happens a lot even in public cloud. I turn something on and as one of my developers turns something on and then goes on to the next project and never turns it off. And so then I'm paying for resources that aren't being used. Or I've got teams that are using resources that are oversized for what they need. So they haven't really scope the sizing right to make sure I'm really optimally running my workloads on the resources that are only the resources that are needed, not having something extra. Even purchasing cloud resources, but then never using them, never deploying them. So understanding what could be turned off or pulled back or redeployed. And then all of this requiring like a lot of manual insight and reporting and trying to manage all of that regularly. It's kind of hard to automate all this, and all that applies into the spend too. So having automation, having the right instances, being able to close things off when they're needed. So you run into these accountability, visibility, and cost challenges when it comes to running workloads, regardless of the cloud. In each public, private, they all sort of have different aspects of this. So yeah, you need to have a way, not only as a platform that works across these different areas, so being able to move that workload from one to the other without having to refactor it, but also being able to have the governance and understanding of where things are running, what resources are being used, what costs are a part of that, and how can you optimize for them. So being able to predict those. So if I have done my work on my attributes of my app, I've done my work on the attributes of the cloud, and then I've decided that this app is going to be optimally in this best place for the workload. Let me see what that's going to cost, and then I can compare and make the trade-off of cost versus functionality often as well. So having an understanding of both of those is one of the things that's always kind of been a challenge for cloud. So what we wanted to do next was we've laid out different things to think about here from a workload perspective. We've talked about the different types of clouds. I want to give some real-world examples. We've got an example of a pure private cloud, and then an example of a cloud that's provided by a business. So business being able to provide a cloud out to its customers. So kind of more of a hosted private cloud, I guess you'd say, or managed private cloud for resources. But I'm going to let Alan go in and talk through these examples, so you get a sense kind of real-world applications that I think we've talked about.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Yeah, and these two customers, and again, we've got, if you check out Nutanix.com, we've got hundreds of customer successes, but I wanted to point out a couple. Trek, if you're a mountain biker out there or a biker, I'm sure the name's familiar to you. But they made the move to the Nutanix cloud platform, to experience many of the benefits that we've been talking about. Right, and making that change, they did the change from the legacy 3-tier so that they can really focus on managing, getting away from managing infrastructure, and making things easier, rather than putting out fires. And just some of the really benefits that they've seen, the 75% reduction in storage and compute. And again, that's, when you compare that back to the legacy 3-tier, different arrays sitting over here in the corner, servers sitting over there, a huge reduction in footprint there, which of course can lower data center costs and so forth, power, cooling, but a lot of cost reductions seen there. And of course, I was looking at the last bullet, and you might say, what does that mean? What, the work-life balance, get a chuckle out of it. But when organizations, and you hear this over and over again, that when organizations move to the Nutanix and they implement a private cloud to run all the different workloads that you see, I mean, they've and start that private cloud right. You don't have to go in on Fridays anymore, Friday nights anymore. Those weekends and the holidays to do all the upgrades. It makes you a happier person, right? So it's not really something to really brush aside. I mean, this is real stuff where you don't have to go in on weekends and so forth, and you do upgrades. You're a happier person. So organizations like Track, we have JetBlue. Everyone goes to Home Depot on the weekends. All these big names that you're familiar with that rely on the Nutanix cloud platform, and that's a private cloud. So when you look at an organization like Bottom Line, so what they're doing is that they're a financial services where they do payments and so forth. The hundreds of thousands types of transactions where they're a payment provider to some of the world's largest banks and publicly traded companies and so forth. But what they did is they took their private cloud and they made it as they were able to make a delivery of cloud-based services from within that secure data center environment. So when their customers actually go to this mission critical app that they actually moved out to make it kind of cloud ready, to the customers, it looks like they're going to a public cloud type of service. But when in fact the data and everything is kept on-prem and it's secure and it kind of checks all the boxes for those banks and publicly traded companies, because it is secure and they don't have to worry about it being up on a public cloud because it checks all of our boxes of security that they need. So different types. One is all on-prem, one is on-prem, but they still are delivering public cloud type services from that on-prem bottom line technologies. So two really good customer success stories. So how do you avoid some of the complexity and really do it right the first time? And as I mentioned, and I've mentioned a couple times, really picking the right platform makes it easy. One that can eliminate all the complexity. There's complicated suites out there that require months of professional services and so forth. And there's got to be a better way. Is it easy to use? Can you get it up and running quickly? If you have a new challenge, can you get components added quickly without, again, more months of professional services and so forth, and lots of different tools and management pieces that go onto it. But and it's got to be 100% software defined, right? And the ability to decouple the software from the hardware, not just reliant on one type of server. And then, of course, hypervisor agnostic. Be able to use multiple hypervisors. And again, what Greg was talking about, you have to be able to run all the different applications and services with the security policies that are attached to those specific workloads and have them follow them independent of the cloud that they run on. So what I'm going to talk about now is private cloud. And what you're looking at here is kind of the outline of the different components that you can consider when building out your private cloud. And of course, it all revolves around the workloads across the top, right? It's got to support all those different types of workloads that Greg was talking about, EUC, VDI, SQL, Oracle, all the different databases, mission critical apps, SAP HANA, and so forth, all the way over to general compute. But But these are the different components that I'm going to walk through in the next few minutes to think about, because some folks, when they move, that maybe you did make the move to HCI, right? And you say, well, I have a private cloud. But what I consider a private cloud is if you go up to AWS and you swipe a credit card, all the automation, all the self-service, all the goodness that makes AWS, why can't you have those same abilities on-prem in your private cloud, right? So it's not just having HCI or some storage and servers over here. It's these different pieces to think about to continue simplifying and continue making things easier. So really, since we're here at Nutanix, we think the first move is start with HCI, right? That's really the first start to simplifying and moving away from that 3-tier type of infrastructure. And really, we could have a 2-hour conversation on HCI, but really, when you look at the basic components of it, HCI, make sure that the HCI that you pick has an easy web scale out type of architecture. Make sure it's going to be an intelligent foundation for your hybrid cloud, and make sure it's designed for resiliency. Make sure it's always on. Make sure it has that intelligent one-click operations with unified management. And again, like I mentioned, it's got to be resilient and it's got to be always on. So, and again, we have plenty of webinars on why HCI makes sense that I recommend you can attend. But really, when you're looking at HCI platforms, consider these 3 things first, as far as the web scale architecture, intelligent foundation, unified management, and always on for that platform, HCI platform. Now, as we start to move up the I call it the layer cake in that previous slide, the blue slide that we were looking at, the next piece is consolidate your data, right? If you look around your data center, you might have an array supporting objects. You might have an array supporting files. You might have 10 different arrays, or again, I'm more kind of picking on vendors out there that have 10 different arrays to support, say, block, right? Why not consolidate all of those down to an HCI platform that supports them all? It simplifies. It gets rid of all the different management tools, but really only Nutanix enables customers to consolidate a wide variety of data, even that unstructured, difficult type of data, databases, files, objects upon that single platform that we're going to be talking about through this presentation, and allow it to scale non-disruptively as data grows. Obviously, data is your most valuable asset in most companies, and your cloud environment needs to have built-in capabilities to ensure all the governance and all the compliance to support that data, but again, support them all on a single platform without having lots of different pieces spread out everywhere. And that's exactly what Nutanix can do, and it's really a big differentiator for Nutanix. Next, as we move up the stack on that blue slide I was showing you a little bit about a couple minutes about, it's automation. So when you think about HCI, there's automation that's included with HCI, lifecycle management and so forth. But Nutanix, we have built-in machine learning and automation that's all presented via a single unified management. So you can reduce all those repetitive tasks that you might be doing and all the different spreadsheets that you might have laying around in order to get things done, like roll out VMs to certain groups and so forth. But consolidate all that down and make things easier and automate it, to just a few clicks. The ability to deploy all those resources non-disruptively and scale your cloud environment during business hours, and I talked about it before, you don't have to come in on the weekends to do it. Make it easy. Being able to manage and monitor servers, storage, and VMs all from that single place. And that's what the automation, with the efficient resource utilization, improving the service quality for everyone, and higher productivity. Get away from, like I said, the firefighting that I mentioned a second ago, and move on to some of the more, critical needs that the business might have, rather than just fighting fires. And that's what automation can do. I'd like to talk about cloud costs here, because as you move to be really become a cloud type of operator with your business, you need to be able to monitor, meter, and really charge back the costs that are being associated with the different things in your environment. All the usage, charge back to staff, charge it back to different business units or departments. And really, we have the private cloud solution that can deliver this capability as a service with no hardware, software as a service that allows you to do this. And really, it's a fundamental component of any cloud experience to be able to see and accurately know your resource costs and being able to allocate them to the appropriate business initiatives and so forth. But that's what all the private cloud metering and control is all about. Having it out of the box, having it as a configurable kind of TCO type of costing model that really shows you the true costs of your cloud spend and your private cloud spend, and offering it back to the business. Next is business continuity, disaster recovery. And I like to look at this in three different buckets. The first one there is business continuity DR, being able to protect all the individual virtual machines, all the application data across all the services that I talked about before, whether it's volumes, files, or objects. Having native disaster recovery options, you don't have to buy separate pieces here and there to do DR. We have native DR options to enable customers to seamlessly keep applications online in the event of both planned and unplanned disasters. And it's whether you're replicating on-prem or in the cloud. And it's also, of course, configurable depending on your RPOs and RTOs across your environment. So that's a biggie. And of course, integration with third-party backup vendors, whether it's you're using something like a Veeam, all the integration that makes things easy there. I mean, we have some customer success stories out on Nutanix.com. It talks about getting set up, customers saying we use Veeam or Rubric and getting up and running with this because we're using it in the past. It took about 15 minutes. That's how easy it is. But there's a huge ecosystem of third-party backup vendors that we enable as well. And of course, at the top here, you've got to secure it all. And when you're talking about securing your cloud, we like to break it down into three major areas. There's kind of the platform side, there's the application side, and there's the whole multi-cloud side of it. But we're talking about built-in capabilities that encrypt data at rest, or when you're looking at the middle for the application side, we're talking about micro-segmentation that really secures the different applications, kind of puts them in their own little spot, secures the network and all the data that might touch it. And then there's, of course, the security controls and compliance checks and self-healing. That means your cloud's going to be protected along the way. And we also have a wide range of certifications, FIPS 140-2 and so forth, that you can see. We actually have a web page just associated with this off Nutanix.com if you want to get more info on this. But lots of different certifications that go along with the security piece. So these are the different components, and all of these different components are delivered with the private cloud solution. It's really, it differentiates from other HCI vendors that are out there because it is a true private cloud. And being able to deliver applications and services and data at scale with all the automation and all the different components you see here, business continuity, security as you go up the stack, that really brings that simplicity and agility to your data center today. And of course, I mentioned it before, when you add on the unparalleled, kind of that choice of hardware and hypervisor agnostic type of things and license portability, it's the best private cloud platform and multi-cloud platform out there. So what happens when you have your private cloud put together, but when engineering or your developers or your sales team comes to you and they have a new application they want to roll out, and it looks like that application might be a better fit to run on public cloud, what do you do? Well, with Nutanix, with the flip of a switch, really within 60 minutes, you can take all those different components that we just talked about, all the different layers there, and actually create your hybrid cloud and connect to AWS and seamlessly move workloads, lift and shift back and forth from on-prem to public cloud. And this is really the differentiators. And we this clusters piece was GA either last week or the week before. But this is really what kind of puts the bow on that whole hybrid multi-cloud platform. Having the license portability between the two. It doesn't matter where your workloads run. You have the license portability between it. Native integration. So all the VPCs and networking, all the integration is seamless between the two. Again, I just mentioned seamlessly moving VMs back and forth, and the management is the same. The same management tool you use on-prem for all the different pieces that we were talking about is the same management that you're going to use when it's connected to AWS and it's a hybrid cloud platform. So really, it's differentiated out. I mean, you can say that we weren't the first to be hybrid cloud, but I think we actually were the first to do it right. So again, when a flip of the switch, within 60 minutes, that whole private cloud can then become a hybrid cloud. And that's what makes it great. So some key use cases for hybrid cloud, lift and shift. I talked about that. It doesn't matter where your workloads live. Simply lift it up, move it to AWS during a season, perhaps, and then move it back when it's not needed. On-demand elasticity. If you don't have room in your data center for more capacity, or you need to rapidly burst into public cloud, it's a great use case for flipping the switch for hybrid. Of course, business continuity, DR, is always a great one. Cloud native services. Maybe it's that new app that I mentioned a second ago. The sales team came to you with a new app that they wanted to roll out, and it's more of that kind of cloud native type, but use all the cloud native services that AWS has. So those are a few great use cases for the Nutanix hybrid cloud. So here's a little bit more digging into kind of the details. Really, it's that platform that runs clusters on AWS. It's having the clusters that you were running and all the different pieces that I talked about will run on bare metal EC2 instances within AWS, all managed within that single platform, single management tool that you manage all the other pieces with. And it provides that nearly identical functionality from on-prem AOS, kind of that platform environment, to AWS. And you can really leverage all your existing, if you have an AWS account already, you can use it. All the credits, you can reuse those. VPCs, VPNs, I mentioned a second ago, direct connect configurations, all of those are used. The network, there's no overlaying NSX on top of all of this. The networking setup is simple. It's actually, I watched the demo the other day, and it's simple. It's a matter of typing in some IP addresses and a couple other things and hitting go. And that's how easy we made it. And really, the result is you get a full hybrid cloud experience without having to deploy or manage data center infrastructure. So as I mentioned, hybrid cloud went GA, I think, last week or the week before, but we've already got, I think, 4 or 5 customers that are already using it, already talking great things about it. North American University Health System, I believe they're down in Texas, but they were using it for desktops, and their success is being able to move them back on-prem from the cloud where they initially were rolled out. So again, it's that kind of that lift and shift, move them up, move them back, and so forth, that North American University is doing. And really the result there is, being able to set up clusters very quickly, and leveraging the AWS networking that I was just talking about, all the VPNs and so forth, and being able to successfully move instances back on-prem from AWS. And with that, I'm actually going to get Greg to talk a little bit about this slide and some of the private and hybrid cloud value pieces that we do bring. Greg, you there?
Yeah, and we'll just close it up here so that we can get some questions answered. I know what we wanted to do is just kind of summarize some of the things that Alan was talking about, those areas where value gets created and the benefits you see from taking an approach with a platform that'll allow you to run your workload on the best the best cloud for that workload and application, the one that makes the most sense from across like the attributes we discussed, your own business attributes. And so being able to really do that quickly, be able to provide value, show that that this approach is much more cost effective over time from a management perspective, faster to deploy, and provides a really great return on investment, ensuring that it's going to be always on and running. So, not having to deal with as little unplanned downtime as possible and as little planned downtime as possible. Being able to do upgrades non-disruptively is hugely beneficial to organizations and saves a lot of nights and weekends and lower productivity. Having that security and compliance and being able to decide how you want to apply that for your specific needs is important. Delivering that self-service and automation that's going to reduce management. It's going to make developers and other teams more productive. Being able to do more, business innovation, that digital transformation that we really kicked it off with, and really doing it regardless of the cloud. You have a common management construct to run workloads, and then you just pick the right cloud to run them on. And ultimately, that's going to allow the partnering of IT and business to accelerate innovation, to really delight customers, and help to gain that competitive advantage. And we have a free tool where you can go and experience Nutanix. We call it Test Drive, and that has several tracks, as it were. There's a private cloud track, there's databases, there's different things that you can go see and play with and do on Nutanix software that's actually running in the public cloud, and all without you having to provision anything or load data or any of that. You can really have that full experience of what Nutanix is like and to see that value for real. So with that, say thank you, or and pass it back and see you to David and go from there. So thank you so much.
Hey, Greg, I do see a question over in the Q&A, and he's asking about our hybrid cloud, the new clusters. Yeah. So I guess he had a customer that had some of their workloads on Azure from AWS. They needed to move workloads around basically from cloud to cloud. So that is a perfect example of what we can do. So we have AWS out now. Azure is coming in a month or two. So that is an exact answer, or a use case of being able to say, if a workload's on AWS, move it to on-prem, and then move it over to Azure if you need to. So that is a perfect use case that you described there or you asked about in the Q&A. So yes, for sure, that can be done.
Let me add on to that. Let me add on to that. Just I would say we just announced AWS. We're working on Azure, but we don't have a timeline on that. So just to be clarified,
okay. Thanks.
Not anything. Can't make promises. It's something we're working on. But in this context, I think the customers, this person was also asking about the individual offerings like Outpost versus Azure Stack, like those being a viable hybrid cloud option. And I think, yes, in some use cases there are. It depends on the workload. There are some specifics around these. And then the key difference being in kind of our approach to doing this and taking a public cloud provider hybrid approach is that you're going to be tied into that specific platform. So if you, in this example you're talking about, they picked AWS and now they want to switch to Azure, that's going to require some refactoring and changing and fixing. And so you kind of get limited. It kind of takes out that multi-cloud option you have if you have a platform that works across in the exact same way across multiple clouds. And so also, long story, all depends kind of on the workload, whether the public cloud provider approach makes sense or not, and it also depends on your requirements for would you want to use other clouds in the future. So that's just a few thoughts on that one.
Excellent. A great presentation, Greg and Alan. I've just brought up a poll question for everyone out there in the audience. I want to call your attention to while we do some more questions. The question on the screen there is, what additional information would you like about the Nutanix solution? And feel free to select one or multiple options on the poll. And so, Alan and Greg, there's lots of good questions coming in here. Feel free to step in and interrupt if you see any that catch your eye. One of the questions I wanted to ask you is, they're saying, is having an HCI environment the same as private cloud, or how are those two different?
Yeah, I can take that one, David. Yeah, and I tried to talk a little bit about that early in the presentation, where, a lot of folks, they might have an environment and they think they have a private cloud, but really when you dig down into it, when I think of a private cloud, it's a lot of those different pieces that I went through in the presentation, from storage consolidation to more automation to cost governance and seeing what's going on. There's a lot of different pieces you can look at, and really you don't have to add all those pieces at once, right? You look at your challenges, some of the things that might be a pain, you work on those first, but having a platform like Nutanix that makes it easy to add those different pieces to kind of build out your private cloud over time if you need to, and knock those challenges off one by one, I think is key. And I think that's one of the great things that we offer. But yeah, if you did make the move to HCI, consider some of the other pieces that I talked about to build out your private cloud, to really match what you might see on AWS to be a true private cloud.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Let's see, here's another good question. This one's from Eric. He's asking about remote offices. Is it possible to have a 2-node cluster with Nutanix?
Yes. From a robo perspective, huge use case for us. And we see a lot of success there in 2-node clusters. You can even do a 1-node cluster, as well as our standard 3 and up. So a lot of flexibility in how you can run, what workloads need to be run, at these remote sites. And and it depends on your availability needs. So like a 2-node cluster would be highly available. We have data protection and all of that in a 1-node cluster. But of course, if you lose the node, you've lost the node, or if you need to do a firmware upgrade or something. So not highly available with 1 node, but with 2 nodes, we've got a witness and the ability to do that. So yes.
Very nice. I like that flexibility for remote offices. Excellent. Let's see, another question that came in here. They're asking about, creating a private cloud. How long does it take to install and set up with Nutanix?
Greg, I can take that one. Yeah, so the first piece of the first piece of that whole layer cake that I showed with the different blue pieces is getting up and running quickly with HCI, right? So you can get Hyperconverged up and running in less than a day, right? That's how fast it is. And then depending on the different components that you want to add on top, it's a matter of simply activating the license at that time, but it's not installing. The great thing about Nutanix is that being able to add those different components is simple, It's not tons of different management pieces and tons of different lifecycle management pieces that you have to add on top, and professional services to go along with it. We make all of that easy. So that's a big thing for Nutanix that we bring. I don't know, Greg, do you have anything more to put on top?
No, I think that was good. Nothing else to add.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, excellent. And then let's see, here's a question from Justin. He's asking about in hybrid cloud, multi-cloud scenarios, which public cloud offerings are compatible?
Yeah, I should say right now it's AWS. So that's what we just recently GA'd. We are working with other cloud providers to continue to add to that. So, obviously the big ones are high on our list, but we're also, looking at others as well. So no specific things I can promise there, but we're working on, the next set of clouds to go with it. But AWS for right now.
Excellent. And I know we're quickly running out of time here. One of the last questions I wanted to make sure we got to is if folks out there, if they click on the link right there, you can actually click in the slides window on nutanix.com/one-platform. That link is also in the handouts tab under test drive. If they go to the test drive, I've been there. It's a very simple, quick form. Can you kind of walk us through what happens after that? What do they get access to?
Yeah, I could take that one. Yeah, I mean, if you don't have time for anything, if you can't download a data sheet or anything, please visit the test drive and check that out, because what it does is it actually gives you access to a cluster environment, and you can pick different experiences and really learn about the software itself. You can try out a lot of the different components that I talked about, David, like some of the automation or the BCDR, disaster recovery, some of the operations, lifecycle management, and so forth. But there's guided tours. So really, if you only want to do if you can only do one thing, please take the test drive, because it's awesome, and you'll learn more and see how easy it really is by taking the test drive. So highly recommended.
Excellent. That's something I'm going to have to try out for myself. It sounds very cool. A great opportunity to learn a lot about all that the Nutanix solution can offer and provide to organizations out there that I know are looking for cloud solutions to make life easier and more efficient and make IT more affordable. So really excellent presentation, Greg and Alan. Thank you so much.
Thanks, David. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you for having us. We appreciate it.
Thank you to Nutanix as well for supporting today's event. Don't forget to check out the test drive. Before we go, I want to award the winner of our Tango $300 gift card. If you're not familiar with Tango gift cards, they can be exchanged for gift cards at popular online retailers, restaurants, shops, all kinds of stuff like that. So the winner of this $300 gift card is Debbie Briggs from Massachusetts. Congratulations, Debbie Briggs. We'll reach out to you to deliver that gift card. And again, check out the test drive before you go, and also the handouts there in the handouts tab. Thank you to everyone for joining on today's webinar. We hope that you learned a lot. We hope that you have a great day, and we will see you next time.